Hello, everyone. Welcome into episode 40 of the Four Quarters podcast powered by Four Quarters Media. I'm your host, Tyler Bennett, here with you once again. Episode 40 is our CCAA women's basketball spotlight show. Would have been all one show, but again, if you listen to the men's basketball CCAA Cross Canada spotlight show, it turned into a spotlight series because I didn't plan well enough, and After Effects only allows you to make a video up to 3 hours. These 5 interviews you'll hear now far exceed combined 3 hours. So that didn't work out. So we had to adapt on the fly. So each episode will hear this same intro. We'll have its own kind of moment to shine, if you will. 5 coaches from across the CCAA and a player in this one as well. 1 coach from each conference, and then we're joined by a player in Quebec in the RSEQ. But with the men's, we went from east to west, and this one, we're going west to east. Start off in the Pac West, joined by Camosun Chargers women's basketball head coach Justin Thiessen. We looked at his career coaching over in China, how he ended up going to China in the first place, what ultimately led him to coming back to Canada, applying for the Camosun job, ultimately getting the job with the Chargers, and kind of what went into his first season with the Chargers, and hindsight, some things maybe he would do differently, and just looked at the entire vibe around the program and kind of the direction he wants to take that. So really fun chat with Coach Thiessen to kind of get this women's basketball spotlight series / show started. And then in part 2, we work our way back towards the East Coast. We go to the ACAC, joined by Briercrest College women's basketball head coach Anthony Skepple. Again, similar kind of chat, looking at his career, again, taking over the program, heading into this season, kind of what that adjustment's been like for him. Taking over a program in a pandemic is never easy, kind of what his approach has been to recruiting, getting the girls in the gym, just taking over a program has its own challenges to begin with. And then you add a pandemic on top of it, and you can't recruit and you can't go out and see players live because there's no live games. Kind of the challenges that have come with the pandemic and taking over a program. And we had a great chat on kind of growing the game as well, and the coverage. And that's a theme that you're going to see in all 5 of these interviews, is how we can grow the game better. And especially from a women's basketball standpoint, how can we get the level of respect, admiration, attention to where it deserves to be? And all 6 of the guests, gave fantastic insights, gave fantastic opinions, fantastic suggestions. And Coach Skepple was no exception. And then in part 3, we head to Ontario. We go to the OCAA. We take a stop at Redeemer, chat with head coach Jesse Van Houwelingen out of the Redeemer Royals. We look at the family culture that himself and assistant coach Pat Ivaroni have tried to instill in the women's basketball program for the Royals. And it's a theme that you see right through the entire university. The entire athletics department breathes one family. And with the hashtag Royal Family, and they embody a family culture from top to bottom, any which direction. Every team is a part of that family. And you tie in the community support that Ancaster brings out on a nightly basis to a home game. That gym is one I think any basketball fan should witness. Hands down. Go see a Redeemer home game. Aesthetically, it won't really do much for you, but when you get in there with a crowd, oh, my goodness. And you'll hear the story again of the reading week game that I was at. That was a packed house. And we looked at kind of the culture that they hope to build. And Coach Van Houwelingen also shares how they've changed their leadership approach within the team. And I found that to be rather interesting. And I think a lot of coaches and players may start to use that in their system to try and maximize the number of players that have a voice in their systems. Then we go to Quebec. Our two-guest interview in part 4 of this 5-part series. We talk with head coach Bernard Tanguay and second-year forward Clara Bergeron from the program of Géants du Saint-Jean. I'm not French, so I practiced to say that. I tried to say it as fast as I could so nobody can call me out. Géants du Saint-Jean. Sounds pretty good to me. Probably sounds terrible when I listen back. But the three of us kind of really wanted to put a spotlight on Quebec basketball and the CEGEP system and kind of how that differentiates itself from high school basketball around the country and how it better prepares you almost for making the jump to U Sports or NCAA institutions, because you do come out as a bit of an older student athlete, a bit more mature. You've had the independence of going to a CEGEP system. So it was interesting to hear more about kind of the dynamic, what goes into playing and attending a CEGEP program from both a coaching perspective, from Coach Tanguay, who's been with the program now 18 seasons, and Clara Bergeron, who is in her second, but is being heavily recruited by almost a dozen NCAA schools. And it was interesting to hear from both Tanguay and Bergeron of how the pandemic has forced them to adapt, how they recruit and are recruited. So that was fun as well, just to hear how they've had to adapt and adjust on the fly, if you will. And then we end this CCAA Women's Basketball Cross Canada Spotlight Series in the ACAA. Chat with Mount St. Vincent Mystics head coach Mark Forward. Again, shining a spotlight on the women's game. He has seen it all at the Mount. He's been a part of the men's program. He's been a part of the women's program. He has seen success as a player and as a coach. So we just really looked at his experiences, and whether he liked it or not, I don't know, because a lot of coaches don't like the spotlight so much. I put it on him a little bit to understand more of who Coach Forward is as a person, how his coaching philosophy has adapted over the years. He touched on the impact that Derek McDermott has had on his career and the program. Just all in all, really interesting chat. And we tried to get some of the keys to the sustained success of the Mystics women's basketball program. He didn't give them all out. You had to keep some obviously close to your heart. You don't want to give everything away on what makes you a winning program. But he gave us some good insight into what's allowed that program to be as successful as they have been in the ACAA. So whether you're on part 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 right now, the interview that's coming ahead is going to be fantastic. I think you're gonna learn a lot about the coaches, their programs, women's basketball as a whole, and you're going to get some fantastic ideas at the end of each one on how to really grow the game and how we can all kind of work together to get that level of coverage, attention, respect, not only around CCAA and U Sports, but around women's basketball as a whole. And that was the focus of this. So with all of that said, get set for now the interview with myself and whoever is scrolling along the subject line of this episode that you've clicked on. And hopefully you enjoy it. Cheers. All right, so now thrilled to be joined by our ACAC women's basketball featured guest on our CCAA women's basketball spotlight show, Anthony Skepple out of Briercrest College. Coach, how are things on your end first and foremost before we jump into everything?
Things are great, man. Really excited to be here. Really excited to do this and chat with you for a little bit.
How are things out in Saskatchewan? I mean, in Caronport, if I'm saying that right, it's not the biggest town in the world.
Nope.
What's day-to-day life right out there now with kind of everything still going on with this whole pandemic?
Well, it's first of all, it's pretty cold. Actually, today was actually pretty nice. It was like almost +5 today, so that was
okay.
That was pretty sweet. We made some snowmen out in the backyard of my house, but it's been I would say different than a lot of other places. Caronport's a really small place. When school's in session, I think we're maybe about 1,000, maybe 1,100, might be even less than that. So, it's kind of its own bubble.
Right.
We're about 15 minutes down the road from Moose Jaw, so that's kind of where we do all our grocery shopping, things like that. But Caronport itself has kind of been its own bubble. We've been pretty good, pretty able to keep things. I think we've had one case in the town the whole time. So, just kind of being in our own bubble here, kind of doing our own thing it's actually really helped us. I think, me personally, I think it's one of the reasons that we're able as a college, as an institution, to kind of be on campus, to practice, all those things, because we are in our own little bubble here.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I drove through Caronport once.
Oh, yeah.
We came out that way last year for the Heritage Classic in Regina, and we drove through, and we were going to actually stay there too at the Pilgrim.
Yeah,
we were going to stay there, and then we were going to Dryden, Ontario, the day after the hockey game, and it was an hour the other way. And the only reason why we didn't is because it was the hour the wrong direction, or else we would have. We drove through, and I mean, it was kind of quick. If you blink, if
you blink, you miss it. That's because it's pretty small.
It looked like nice and small, and I pointed out too. I told her, I'm like, Briercrest College is like right in there. Like if we have time, we could stop, and we didn't have time to stop. But I mean, I'd never really thought of that. It's kind of small town, your own little bubble, and kind of makes it easier for the team, like you said, to get out and practice. How's that been for the group to kind of get on the floor and get some reps in that other schools haven't been as fortunate to do?
We're really blessed here. We had a team meeting yesterday, and we were just talking about a couple different things. And one of our players brought up, just out of the blue, she's just like, it's so good that we're able to just be on campus and practicing. Something we're talking about and talking about other things and whatnot. And she was just like, we're lucky. Not a lot of other schools are able to do that. And we have the chance to be on campus every day with our friends, interacting with profs in person, which is, from an academic standpoint, is huge.
Right.
And then, we're able to practice and work out and all those things. So we're very lucky, very blessed here to be able to do that. It's been different.
Right.
It's not your normal year, but for us, it's as close to normal as we can be with everything going on.
That's that small little piece of what normalcy used to be. Yeah. And it could mean, I've said it, I don't know how many times on here alone, like it's crazy how different it is since March, and it's only been like 9 months, and it feels like it's been forever since we were mask free and everything was in person, and nobody batted an eye too much if you were within 6 feet of someone else. And now, like, we're recording this on the 18th. The Pac West just canceled their season today. So everything is nowhere near what it was just 9 months ago, which is weird to say that it's been so long, but it feels like it was just like last week.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, like for me, I think, 9 months ago, February or whatnot, or, end of January, February, like I was with the men's program here, and we were trying to make a playoff push. We missed by a couple games, and it seems so far away that we were playing games that, it was no big deal to go through handshake line. and just shake hands after a game and just, talk to people that that you haven't seen in a little while, and players and whatnot. It seems like it's been so long since we were able to do any of that.
And like, because it ended like March 13th, I think 2 days before nationals, and like you hear about it's coming, or the pandemic is hitting certain areas, and you're like, it's not going to come this way. Like, you're kind of almost naive to it, and you're talking about because like we're out in Ontario, so we had our like indoor soccer provincials at the time, and we're they were adjusting on the fly. So you went from no handshakes to kind of like fist bumps or whatever, or elbows, and you're still playing games. And then within like a day and a half, 2 days, you're done. And
everything.
You just, all those conversations, all those kind of fly by the seat of your pants protocols just didn't matter anymore, because here we are, and 9 months later, we're still knee deep in this, and I don't see it slowing down anytime. So, at least for us. I mean, Ontario is just its own monster. I think Caronport might be the place to go. And
Caronport's the place to be, man. Like, our bubble here, it's working. So, it's the place to be. If you want to come play some basketball or go to school, it's the place to be. Because I don't know. I will say, like, I'm from Edmonton, and my family is in Edmonton, and my wife's family is in Rocky Mountain House in Alberta. And just hearing the stories, I'm in a group chat with the rest of my family and whatnot, and they were just talking about how their cases have doubled within like the last day. And like you're saying, it's like we're just hoping that sometime like it'll end, and we're still in for a bit of a long road. I think, at least.
Like we're setting new records every day out here, and I mean, with Christmas coming up too, like there's going to be gatherings galore. Like I don't see it slowing down till the new year at the earliest, and then a lot of people are kind of relying on that vaccine that may come, may work, may not. Like, who knows? And like I don't know. I honestly have no idea. But I mean, like Caronport, I mean, you guys are practicing basketball. That'd be basketball for me to cover. So right now everybody's canceled. I mean, it's sounding pretty sweet. I might have to put like a little dust off the elementary school PowerPoint presentations and try to sell it to somebody to maybe move out there for a little bit and see.
Yeah, get a trip out to Caronport and come check it out. I mean, we might be, there's talk lately about mini leagues and exhibition games and whatnot for us. With Saskatchewan, we're fortunate in that Saskatchewan is Saskatchewan, right? Like there aren't a ton of big centers here. A lot of people are spread out, a lot of rural communities. So even, U of R, U of S, there's opportunity there that we're trying to set up some sort of mini league where we do some stuff with them. I've had some conversations with Dave Taylor at the U of R about starting up a mini league with them, and even just a couple high school all-star teams from Regina. Just getting some games in on a weekly basis, come January, February sort of thing. But we're still waiting to hear. There's been new restrictions just put out today in Saskatchewan. So sporting teams are okay for right now, but the future is certainly uncertain. That's for sure.
Right. Games would be probably a welcome change to just practicing against the same group every day. And
totally.
Kind of off that, one of the questions that came in off Instagram was around coaching during a pandemic. Just kind of what's been the biggest challenge for you kind of outside of all the protocols and everything else to try and get the girls in shape, ready to go? Obviously, you were still waiting to hear about the season at the time when it first started. But what's kind of been the biggest challenge for you kind of taking over the program and trying to get everything set up your way amidst everything else?
The biggest challenge for me was actually recruiting. I came over from the men's side here. I spent the last couple of years as assistant coach for the men's team. And so, all of my recruiting was high school boys basketball. I watched a couple girls games here or there. Not enough that I was, looking at, I remember this, and so-and-so player and whatnot. So, when everything, like when I got the job, it was kind of right in the height of everything,
Right.
and recruiting became, for me, as somebody new moving over to a different gender, became almost non-existent. I was scraping, trying to email every coach that I knew, every coach from Edmonton that I'd coached against, or
Right.
or that I was friends with, and just be like, hey, do you know anybody? And differences, I will say, between where we're at in Canada right now and where they are in the States, because I spent a lot of time on the recruiting websites in the States, talking to a lot of coaches in the States, looking for some international players,
Right.
And they have a lot of film on them, right? Like that's something, I think, going forward, now that we've dealt with this for a little while, I'm sure high school students, and whatnot, will see the value of getting themselves on film. But
for sure.
that was one of the things, that there just wasn't a lot of film out there.
No.
Right. And some had it, some didn't. Some, you're talking to coaches and you're trusting their word, that, people that and you trust what they know and whatnot. And you try to do what you can and see if maybe you can set up a visit or something like that. And usually that didn't work out. So that, like, recruiting was definitely the biggest challenge for me, just being new. I mean, there's going to be turnover with a new coach coming into the program. People are, hey, I was, here because the old coach, and you try to convince them to stay, but they're like, hey, you know what, this just wasn't for me, or whatever it is. And so that was definitely the biggest challenge. From a team standpoint, there's always the fear of demotivation, shall we say, because our season's canceled. I have a player, she's fourth year, she's coming back, she's graduating this year, she's probably not going to play fifth year, or isn't going to play fifth year because school and everything like that and whatnot. And she's somebody that was close to being in our top 5 all-time rebounding wise and whatnot. And one of the reasons she's coming back is one last kick at the can. Year last year, the program's been rising. One last kick at it. Let's see what we can do. And then all of a sudden, cancel. Right. And so you worry about motivation there, but I have a really great group of girls that I don't worry that much about it. And one of the things for us too is that there is still hope for us. Just our program specifically, right? Just based on our situation, there is still hope that, we'll be able to play games. It won't be ACAC stuff, obviously, or whatnot, but, there is still that hope that we'll be able to get quite a few games in the second semester. And so, there's been a bit of a lull the last little bit, but I mean, our program, has gone through a little bit in the last couple of weeks, just, with myself personally, like just coming off surgery, right? So there's going to be a bit of a lull anyways. Then the news comes down that the season's canceled. But I think, for us, we're out of that lull and we're back kind of rolling on all cylinders sort of thing, as we're hopefully gearing up for some games in second semester.
Right. Those veteran players too, those are the ones that I kind of feel for the most, because really their careers potentially ended without really any notice, or kind of out of their control. And I mean, I get the not using eligibility this year because there's no games and whatever else, but again, like you said, people are graduating. You're not really going to want to come back for another year and necessarily delay kind of their professional career and aspirations, basketball or otherwise, just to have that last one kick at the can and end their career on their terms. Those are the athletes that I kind of feel for the most, absolutely. Because like it was out of their hands altogether. And
it really was. I agree for sure.
Because you can't plan for this. Like, you took the court for your last regular season game thinking, okay, like we fell short this year. There's always next year, like you said, programs on the rise. It's going to be different pieces coming in. Like, we're on that trajectory, and then the news comes down, no season, and then now you're just kind of in a state of kind of uncertainty. And I wouldn't blame them for having a lack of motivation, because really, what is there to look forward to?
It's a tough ask, right? Like, it's a tough ask for players to like you said, like they're coming, they want that opportunity to right some wrongs from the year before, and they come, and it's like you said, everything is taken right out of their hands. It's one thing, a player doesn't come back, they're like, you know what, I'm just done, I'm out, sort of thing. But when the decision, it's not their decision, from an athlete standpoint, it's almost like there's a feeling of uneasiness or unrest about it, because you didn't get to decide. I mean, I think back to I played in the ACAC a long time ago, and I only played 4 years, and I didn't play a fifth year because I didn't want to take extra classes and whatnot. And even that decision myself, I'm like, I do wish that I did play that fifth year, right? And then you have players now, it's just like, man, I wish I could play my fourth or fifth year, but I don't even get the opportunity because it's not even my choice. And I mean, myself personally, for me personally, I think it's a tough ask to ask somebody to come back if they're done school, right? Like, there's nothing for them to take academically. It's that's just my personal opinion, but I think it's a tough ask to be like, yeah, come back and spend the money to go to classes that you don't need, and put off working and put off your career and whatnot to come play an extra year when, the decision was made that you couldn't this year.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's tough. That's a tough situation to be in as a coach, and then as a player too, because you'd want to finish, you kind of make up for more wrongs with having the year canceled, but then financially it doesn't make any sense to pay for a fluff program that you don't need, that you're just taking just to play another year of basketball. And then you're spending, again, another 8-12 months, like you're training all summer again, and then you're playing a full season. And with this uncertainty, like, who knows what's going to happen next year even now.
Totally.
So, I mean, touch wood, we're hopefully going to have games, because if we go 2 years, like, I don't know, I'm going to go crazy. But I mean, it's probably the most unfortunate thing for these veteran players to have their careers end without them having a say and really knowing that it was over. I think that's kind of what, like we said, hurts the most for them.
For sure. Absolutely.
Off that, then, obviously that's been the challenging part. What's been the best part of the semester, with kind of just getting back in the gym, having the girls together? What's been the best part in your transition from the men's side to the women's, with everything that you're trying to build?
There's been a couple things. Like, one, I can't stress enough how amazing it's been to just be in the gym, to just be working with the girls, and just be around the team every day. They've been very gracious with me, like, with some health stuff through the first little bit of the year and whatnot. And so that for me personally has been the best part. I told the girls, we had a team meeting, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago or whatnot, but, I told girls, as a coach, you remember every team that you coach, and everywhere that you go, there's always a special place in your heart for the first teams and places that you go. But I will never forget this group of girls. They've been very gracious to me throughout my whole process, my whole struggle with some health and different things and whatnot over the start, that I am personally indebted to them for forever, and I will never forget them for it. I mean, and there's been struggles along the way and just with different things, but, like, there's been a lot of great moments, in practice, in, different things, going out for meals, or, having fires at my house, hanging out, and we had a great barbecue at our team chaplain's house on the first weekend, or not the first weekend, I think it was the second weekend of school. And just, those are memories that I will really cherish forever. I love coaching and I love being on the court, but I love those moments outside of the game, outside of practice, even more. My wife and I talked many times about, when we've had the team over for a fire in the backyard, socially distanced, of course. But, we've looked at each other a couple times and been like, this is why we're doing it. This is why I wanted to become a coach, just for moments like this. And we've had quite a few of them this year that have been pretty good.
I think those, like you said, those are the kind of the moments that make coaching what it is. Everybody on the outside kind of sees that end product. They kind of see the 2 hours twice a week on the court and think that's coaching. You look behind the scenes, like the barbecues and just having the team together, just that bonding and like kind of the growth away from the game, I think is what really makes the coaching of any sport as rewarding as it does. Because wins and losses obviously mean something, but at the end of the day, it's about that kind of personal development, the relationships, everything else that you do away from the game that I don't think people on the outside of sport realize and kind of appreciate as much as everyone else does in the sport.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments, you know, that you think back on as a player, as an athlete growing up, and you know, when you think about it, a lot of those moments that you think back and remember, a lot of them aren't actually in games or in practices. You know, they're hanging out with your team, you know, when you're in high school, when not hanging out with your team in the hallway, you know, and getting into nonsense and having fun, right? Like those are the moments that you remember for your life. And yeah, you for sure remember the great wins and, you know, the times your coach went crazy in practice and those sort of things. But usually, like, you remember those great moments that you have on the road, in the vans, in the hotels, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, like looking back at like when I played sports, like hockey tournaments, I don't remember 3/4 of the games that we had. It's all the hotel shenanigans that you get into. And my dad was always my coach. So I remember his outbursts, and they were fun until I have to serve as penalties, which is not fun at all. I mean, I guess that's the price you pay to be the coach's kid. You pay the price for his temper, if you will. But yeah, those are the kind of the moments that you really remember. Like the wins or whatever. I mean, at the time they matter, but after the year's done, no one really cares anymore. They have no effect on you whatsoever. But all those moments you had in between the wins and the losses kind of make it what you want sport to be, and you want it to be fun. And I mean, as long as you have fun off of it, you're going to have fun on it. And it sounds like you guys have that kind of figured out pretty good.
Yeah, it's a different place here, right? Like, you know, I do encourage, if you want to come see a crazy atmosphere, Briercrest can get pretty crazy on game days and whatnot, but you know, it's a different atmosphere here. Just kind of being who we are and able to impact the lives of our athletes on just more than an athletic level. And I mean, you know, that's nothing to say anything of anywhere else, because coaches impact the lives of athletes every day on a level outside of the court. But you know, it's a real great opportunity that we have here at Briercrest to do that.
And I think too, with having it such like a small community, I'm guessing, I've never been obviously to a Briercrest game, but I'm guessing there's a lot of like community support around the athletics department, and on game days, volleyball, basketball, what have you, there's going to be a lot of fan support and community involvement, if you will.
It's a great place. I mean, I remember my first year here actually at Briercrest, I was the assistant athletic director. So I got a chance to see all the sports, all the games, and you know, the hockey game, the crowd gets up and they're banging on the glass, and it's wild. And volleyball and basketball, they're, you know, it's not an overly big gym. I mean, it is big, but the way the court's set up, you know, the fans are kind of right on top of you. So you know, when it gets full, it can get a little intimidating having a bunch of people right there, you know, almost, you know, you're inbounding the ball and they're kind of right by your legs. Yeah.
Those are the environments you want, though. Like those are the ones that are the most fun to play in. Like, especially, I mean, as a road team, like that makes it more fun.
Oh yeah, those are always the best games. You know, you come into, you know, it's always the best in those smaller gyms, right? Because you know, smaller gyms, it feels like there's more people. It feels like it's louder, and yeah, it's nice. It's nice to come in on the road and just play in a great atmosphere.
Smaller gyms, like you just walk out and it looks full, and it just feels louder because there's not as much empty space, and the sound just kind of bounces off everything. And I mean, as a home team, it feels good to obviously have that support, but as a road team, like, I mean, obviously for you guys, you don't want them to have it, but it would give you kind of that extra motivation to want to perform well on someone
Oh,
else's
yeah.
floor. And I
Totally.
mean, it kind of brings out the best in both sides.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go kind of off the chart a little bit. So you mentioned kind of the coaching. This is why you coach, with obviously the relationships and the moments away. What really got you into coaching first? Like, when did you realize that coaching was kind of for you?
So I, like yourself, grew up with a dad as a coach.
Okay.
So my dad, I always tell the story. My dad coached basketball. He coached high school basketball actually in Kingston, Ontario.
Okay.
For I want to say 15, 20 years before we ended up moving out to Alberta. The story that I always tell is that my dad actually left my mom in labor with me to go coach a basketball game.
Wow.
It was a really long labor, though. It was over like 28 hours or something like that. So it's not like, they were in the room and he was just like, I got to go. I'll be back in 2 hours.
I'm out.
But,
That's awesome.
So I've been around the game my entire life. My parents have a picture on their mantle of a newspaper cutout. My dad was coaching a city championship game in Kingston. He used to coach at Frontenac High School in Kingston.
Okay.
And there was me. I think I was 18 months old or something like that, shooting at halftime. So they have a picture there. But, I grew up, obviously playing the game all the way, from that young age to all the way through college. And I actually went to college, went to King's University in Edmonton to study music. And so my first couple years, so I have a music degree. I stayed in music, but for the first couple years that I was in school, my career goal was to graduate with my music degree and get a job in an orchestra and play in an orchestra for the rest of my life.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It's people are actually pretty shocked to learn that about me, which I mean I understand, but
I'll be honest, I didn't know that either.
That's what whenever I do like tell one interesting fact about yourself sort of thing, that's usually the one that I go with.
Okay.
But in my fourth year, I actually started coaching junior high basketball.
Okay.
In Edmonton, the junior high that my brothers had gone to. I knew a teacher there. He wasn't the athletic director, but he was a volleyball coach there, and he went to my church, and he was saying that, yeah, we don't have a basketball coach this year. Our athletic director asked if I knew anybody, would you want me to put your name forward? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll try and see what it's all about and whatnot. And, I've been around the game long enough that I figured I could coach junior high basketball.
Yeah.
And so they asked me to do it, and I said, sure. And, first couple practices or first game, and I was like, oh boy, I don't want to be a musician anymore. It looks like we're gonna have a nice career goal change here.
Okay.
And from there, I was kind of like, this is awesome. I love doing this. I'm gonna try and make this my career. So that was kind of the change. And from then on, I was just like, yeah, we're gonna try and make it as a coach.
So you got that first little taste, and after that, it was to heck with the orchestra. We're going coaching.
That's right. It was off to the races. Then I spent 2 years in junior high there.
Yeah.
And then I moved up to coaching high school girls in Edmonton.
Okay.
And then coached high school girls for 4 years there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, I guess my goal and whatnot was kind of push forward as well. Like when I graduated university, I actually got a job working with the Edmonton Eskimos in the CFL, and I spent 4 years working with them and started as a video assistant, became video coordinator, and then became an offensive quality control coach. And, being around those guys for 4 years and seeing how they worked, I went through a bit of a change and was like, man, can I make it as a CFL coach? And, I thought I could, kind of failed a little bit. And then, but basketball kind of came back calling, and just having those 4 years of seeing how pros worked was kind of pushed my drive to make it as a coach even further. Then it became real that like, no, like you can do this. Like you're working in sports now. Yeah, it's football, it's not basketball, but you know, you're working in the pro game. Like you can make it as a coach, and that kind of helped push my drive a little bit further.
I gotta ask, what did you play in the orchestra, or do you play an instrument? Trombone. Okay,
is my instrument. So
okay.
Yeah.
I always got flack. Like I only played an instrument in grade 9 when like you had to, grade 9, 10 music. And I played the French horn just because it was like, we're like one of two that could. And the amount of flack I took for that, just because it was different.
Yeah, it is different. My wife actually plays French horn, so
hey,
yeah, we have some jokes about it between the two of us. But yeah, trombone was the slide. Okay. That's my thing.
Mm-hmm. I was never a big music guy. I never. I mean, you do enough to kind of get by.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but hearing like orchestras play too, like that takes some talent.
It's funny. I always when I talk to people about music stuff, I tell them, sports and music are actually very, very similar disciplines. They're both super high performance based and super competitive fields. That there's actually a lot of parallels between the two of them.
Yeah, I guess I've never really thought of it that way. I mean, it takes a lot to get to that level, and to stay at that level, like you got to put in the work, the hours, the practice, whatever, all that work behind the scenes to lead up to however long 2-3 hours an orchestra performs. But now that you say that, I see the discipline that it takes to get to that level, and it's not easy at all. I look back, I only did it in class and I struggled.
I'm actually very thankful for because I grew up in just a music background. Like my family is very musical and whatnot, and my dad was actually, while coaching high school before we moved out to Alberta, was actually a professional trumpet player too. So kind of growing up in that life, I was, it helps the competitiveness, and it helps, it helps understand that there's always people gunning for your spot, if you're playing somewhere or whatever. And that just kind of, growing up in that environment, and that it just helped, fuel the competitiveness a little bit.
Yeah, that would kind of build those habits early. And then, it's music, and then it shifts to sports. But it's kind of that same process. Somebody's always gunning for your position, whether it's coaching, playing, athletic director, whatever it is. There's somebody's gunning for you. And if you don't put in those hours behind the scenes, I mean, someone's going to be right there behind you to take it when you fall.
That's right. Absolutely.
Looking at, obviously, your dad kind of coaching and everything else, was there any kind of like pieces of advice that he gave you that you kind of still use today, or other mentors that you had in coaching that you still kind of live by to this day?
Like my dad, so when I was growing up, my dad, he only coached me in club. He didn't coach me in school up until I actually played for him in college for a couple of years. He was very much like, he wanted me to experience other coaches. He didn't want me to grow up having him being my only coach. So he stayed away from coaching me in school. He did 1 year in grade 7 just because we didn't have a coach, and so he was asked. He was coaching at King's as an assistant coach at the time. And we didn't have a coach, and there's the only way we're going to be able to play, and so he's just like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But he really wanted me to experience other coaches, and so I got the chance to work with some great coaches growing up, and some that I still, every chance I get a chance to see them now, I going back to Edmonton and whatnot, and now is recruiting kids. I got to go see one of my junior high coaches. He was coaching a high school in Edmonton, and it was great just to see him again. So any chance I get to see them is great. And so I thought that was kind of cool from my dad to be able to back off a little bit to say, because obviously, I'm his son, and you're going to be protective of your son, and you're going to want the best for your kids and whatnot. But just being willing to back off and humble himself a little bit, to be like, there's other coaches out there that are going to have different views and different things like that. And, when he coached me in the when he would coach me in the summers, coach a club and whatnot, I would always remember one of the things that he would always say is, whatever you think about me as a coach or whatnot, when you go back to your high schools or your junior highs or whatever, your coach that's what you do. You do what your coach says, right? You don't say, well, my club coach in the summer said this and he's a college coach. And that's something for myself personally. Like I work with Basketball Saskatchewan a little bit, doing things with them that I've taken. And I'm just like, hey, when you go back to your school, it's like what I say, what your coach says, that's what goes, right? If your coach teaches you something different that he believes in or she believes in, you need to take that and you need to make that work to the best of your ability because they're your coach. And that is something that I always thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And there's been other coaches along the way. My dad actually, one of the things that I talk about with my dad that was a struggle a bit was my dad actually got fired in my fourth year. There was about 6 or 8 games left. And the guy that ended up taking over, he was our assistant coach at the time. His name was Joe Ness. He actually ended up coaching the women's team at St. Mary's when they first got in the ACAC. But, I remember it was a tough time for me. My dad just got fired. It's the stress of college and whatnot, and my dad was fired. And I remember the first practice that we had after my dad had gotten let go, I was just like so out of it. And we at the beginning of practice, he just talked about, there's going to be people that are happy about what just happened. There are going to be people that are upset about what just happened, but there's somebody here talking about me that is distraught by what just happened, and that's somebody obviously very, very close to them that just lost their job, and just kind of taking me under his wing during that time, which was pretty tumultuous. The word I'm trying to say in my life was huge, and he's somebody that to this day is one of my best friends, one of my mentors. I text him many times over the last couple of years as I've been applying for different jobs and, trying to get to where I'm at right now. And he's always been somebody that's always answered the phone, always been like, yeah, we can chat for however long you want. And so that he's been, when I think about my mentors, people that have, kind of taken me under their wing, him and my dad have been the two guys that are really like helped. That I wouldn't be here coaching, I think, if it weren't for the two of them.
Right. I mean, yeah, that situation too, especially with the son being coached by the dad and the dad gets fired, like that could have gone one of two ways, really. I don't think there's any other direction. It's either the way it went with him kind of taking you under his wing and kind of helping you kind of through the situation, but it kind of helped him probably through the situation as well, or it could have just went completely south. And who knows if you would even be coaching because that could have maybe turned you off from it. I look back to like my dad was always my coach, so it's opposite of you. Like there was one year he didn't coach, and then our coach quit halfway through, and he had to come in and do it, or else nobody would coach. And we always had a rule that, again, kind of learn from other people. Anybody who had a parent on the bench didn't talk to their parent. Like you were coached by someone else because you have that kind of relationship. Like you're going to get a bit more lippy, kind of give it back a bit more. The car rides home were long, not going to lie. I mean, I could not play, and I would still, it'd feel like I was the one who gave up 8 goals.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously wasn't intentional. It's just the way it happened. I mean, coaches,
it's just the way it is. Yeah.
Just part of the problem. But I mean, yeah, we gave it back a few times, so we had to put that rule in at an early age where you don't talk to your own kid because, then moms get involved from the stand.
That's right.
Yelling and carrying on because they know what's happening.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was the one year I didn't play. I broke my ankle. I played 9 games out of 50, so I'm with the moms on the side, and
Yeah,
You can see husbands yelling at kids on the bench, and the moms are yelling at husbands across the
right.
ice, and
Yeah,
it's not a good scenario. But yeah, we kind of had that too. You kind of learn from other coaches, and I think I encourage a lot of kids to probably try that a bit, and kind of dads and moms kind of step back and let their kids experience something new. Because
I mean, for me, like, I have 3 kids myself, and obviously they're going to be pretty heavily involved with sports, right? And and I'm going to want the same thing for them. Like, I don't, it's going to be tough because I'm going to want to be like, yeah, do this, do this, do this, but even they should be able to learn from people that aren't me and be able to say, yeah, this was really cool that I learned from whoever's coaching their team, sort of thing.
Yeah. One more kind of on Briercrest before we get into a couple more at the end of quick ones around the culture at Briercrest. And it's one that came in as well off Instagram, actually from one of your players as well. I'll throw that in there too.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, what are you looking like? What's the culture you're trying to build at Briercrest? Obviously, you can tell already it's kind of like got that family kind of vibe to it with the barbecues and the community involvement already around the program. Just kind of what type of culture are you hoping to build with the program? And obviously this year is a bit challenging with the pandemic, but that aside.
Right. So one of the things that we're really big on here is they call it transformational coaching. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but we look at a whole athlete approach, and it's kind of something along the lines of what you and I were talking about earlier in the conversation. Wins are wins, right? Wins are great. We want to win as many games as we can.
Right.
But we don't define ourselves by the number of wins that we have. We're trying to move away from that attitude of, well, if I win a lot of games, I'm great, right? Because we think there's a lot of things that get hidden underneath a lot of wins, right? And we want to create that attitude of, there's more to this game. There's more to what we're trying to do here as coaches, as athletes, than win basketball games. Yeah, we're going to be competitive. We're going to work. We're going to drive, all those sorts of things. We're going to try to win every game that we can, but we want to make sure that off the court we're taking care of ourselves. Obviously, bit of a different institution than others because we are a Christian institution, right? And that plays into a lot of what we want our athletes to be and how we want our athletes to carry themselves and what message we're putting forth as a program.
Right.
It would be really disingenuous of us as a program if we were to basically just put out there that, yeah, if you come in and win a bunch of games, you're great. And that's all that matters because, as a Christian institution, that kind of flies in the face of who we are.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that, I told the girls at the beginning of the year that, our faith and our family got to come first before anything else. And wins will come, right? If, I'm of the belief that if we take care of, this and this, and we're as much as people probably don't want to hear this anymore from the 76ers, but we're trusting the process of what we're trying to create here, that the wins will come and everything will fall into place if we're taking care of, our faith, our family, our academics, and then our sport. The wins will come into place, and that's kind of how our first meeting went. And I told the girls right from the start, our faith has got to come first. That is what defines me as a person. That's what we want our athletes to be here, and then our families obviously come next. And for myself personally, I've worked with a lot of different coaches. When you're in the CFL and that pro game, a lot of it is job first. And I always tell people, one of the reasons that I left the CFL was most days I was going to work at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was getting home at 11:30 midnight at night.
Jeez.
And I wasn't seeing much of my family. My wife and I, kind of halfway through my time in the CFL, had just had our first kid, and for me, I was that first year of his life, I was home for like 10 to 12 dinners. And so, one of the reasons that I left that life was I needed to take care of my family. And so, that comes for me right after my faith. That we gotta make sure that we're taking care of our family, and we're taking care of our academics, and then we're taking care of our sport.
Right.
And that's kind of how the culture is driven here. And we have one of those one of those types of situations here where I try to be as open and transparent with our team as possible, especially right now.
Right.
It's a very fine line between being transparent and giving away too much information that athletes shouldn't hear. But
right.
When they don't hear information, that's when talking starts to happen. That's when fear starts to set in about different things and whatnot. And so,
right.
I try to be as transparent as I can and give them the opportunity to share what's on their mind. I've worked with a lot of different coaches, and some of them it's, hey, whatever I say goes, and you don't like it too bad. And then I've worked with others where there's been that open communication of, hey, maybe you're seeing something different than I'm not. And I like to have that with the girls where, yes, we haven't played any games yet, but you guys are on the floor. You guys are able to see things that even myself on the sideline, I'm not able to see. And you guys have to be able to, I think we have to be able to be open enough with each other that they can say, Coach, this isn't working. We need to try something like this because, I'm seeing this on the floor. So that's kind of one of the things that we like to drive here, just being able to be open with each other on all sorts of things, and that includes basketball.
Right. And I think, too, like you said, from a coaching standpoint, like there's that fine line between kind of being transparent and letting them know too much. But I think athletes would feel more comfortable being transparent and open with you if they kind of see that from you to them, kind of have that two-way street. And obviously there's going to be some scenarios where what you say it goes. And then, again, there's that fine line between kind of what is, or in those situations and what other situations can they kind of have more freedom to do, obviously, because there's still that coach player, I guess, power, the balance, I guess, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term. But yeah, again, off that too, like with the wins, I think your faith and your family kind of affect kind of on the court. Like obviously you want to have those things, but the wins don't affect the other things, because as long as you keep your faith, keep your family, wins are going to come. But if you base your faith and family off wins, it doesn't work that way. It's kind of a trickle down effect. You don't kind of swim upstream. If that made any sense at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't know if it did. It doesn't here. When it comes out, it kind of sounds like gibberish.
That's exactly it, right? Like, and we feel if we take care of those things that the wins will be there, right? And and I mean, we have great basketball players here that will obviously aid in that winning as well, But like, we want to make sure that in all aspects of our life that we're taking the right steps, the proper steps to taking care of ourselves and taking care of what needs to be taken care of before we worry about, well, how are we winning games? What are we doing? Because it's really easy to just let things slide in the name of winning.
Right.
And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're winning the right way, as much as my dad used to say that all the time, and I got pretty annoyed with him saying it. But you want to win the right way, and for us, that's taking care of our faith and our family and our academics, and then our sport.
To me, whether win or lose, if you focus on your faith and family, they're going to be there, win or loss. If you kind of focus on the wins and neglect the other two, if you lose and you're focused on a win, you've already lost the faith and the family part of it. So now you're 0-3 instead of having at least 2 wins if you focus on in that order. Because after the game, the wins and losses don't matter, but your faith and family will. So if you neglect them during the season, try to pick them up afterwards, they're not always going to be there. And you're playing catch up. That doesn't make sense. It makes sense in my head, and then it comes out and I hear myself talk, and I'm like,
no, I got you, man. Okay. I'm right there with you.
Hey,
for sure.
That makes me feel better, so I appreciate that. Is there anything else on Briercrest you want to add in on kind of maybe what the program or yourself, the journey, before we get into the last couple? And
it's a great place to be, and I'm very blessed to be here. And I think about my wife and I were actually just talking at dinner before coming on, and I was looking at, some of the stuff we're going to chat about and whatnot, and she was even just saying, my attitude coaching wise has changed, exponentially in the 3 years that I've been here, and that's a lot of that has to do with, just who I've been around. We have a great group of coaches here.
Right.
Our athletic director, Stan, he's a great support, and as a basketball guy himself, he's coached here, and then he coached at Trinity Western. Like, it's great to be able to kind of lean on that resource as a basketball person as well.
Right.
And from a coaching standpoint, I get a chance to work with, Shane, who I worked with last year or the last couple of years at the men's program. Two of the best volleyball coaches in the country here. Our hockey coaches are great, and it's great for me as a young guy coming up to be able to look at these guys that have been around the block a little bit and be able to learn from their experience and also learn from their experience here. And, as a smaller school in our conference, a school we're in a different province than everybody else in our conference. And, being able to learn from them about how to be successful here, just in regards to in the conference, has been great. And I learned a ton over the last couple of years. It's kind of helped shape my coaching to where it is now. And think about way back when I first started coaching junior high, almost 10 years ago now, and changes now, like the kind of coach that I am now to what I was back then. It's been a pretty crazy journey, but being able to learn from them has really helped shape and change me over the last couple of years.
It's like, even like we said off the top too, like looking back 9 months ago with COVID, like it's weird looking back at like when you first started coaching to where you are now, like that difference. And kind of looking back, I don't think we do it enough, like kind of looking back to see where we've been and how we've changed. I think doing that recollection every so often is never really a bad thing, but it's always fun to kind of see who you were when you coached junior high 10 years ago to now, and how kind of like for yourself, your kind of priorities shifted. You went from focusing on music to now coaching is your big thing and kind of everything else. And it's fun to look back and see where you've come and how you've changed. But the one thing I get about Briercrest, and like not just the school but the community, is just that big family. Like everybody kind of works hand in hand, and coaches all work together, kind of bounce ideas off everyone. And then with the team, like it feels like there's a big family, big community within the small community that is Caronport.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I sometimes I think to myself when I'm sitting in a department meeting, I'm like, man, I get to sit here with guys that have been doing this for a long time, and I just get to bounce my ideas off them. And, and I'm like, I feel so young sometimes, like, and some of them just aren't even that much older than me, and, maybe 10 years older than me. And sometimes I'm sitting at the table and I feel pretty young, and I'm like, I get the opportunity to work with these guys every day and to bounce ideas and to just check out their process and see how they work. And I've been very blessed throughout my whole career, like being able to do that. And then for as much as there were some things working with Eskimos that weren't so great, I still got to spend 4 years working in the CFL and hanging out with pro coaches and pro athletes every day for 4 years. And I've been really blessed to have a lot of people that I can see how they operate day to day and take some of that and add it to my own skill set.
Just kind of take little lessons as you go and learn, and then apply them, whatever they may be, to as you go year after year, and continue that education as you go around.
Absolutely, for sure.
One, we ask everybody, or I ask everybody, before we get into kind of your love for MLB The Show and wrap it up, just around growing the game and growing the level of coverage in Canada, because like yourself, you just said, kind of bouncing ideas off everybody, like listening to coaches and players kind of tell their stories and experiences. Everybody has a different experience with college, university basketball in Canada. So just to kind of get more ideas out there flowing, how do we get more people not only paying attention to women's basketball in Canada, but let alone just kind of getting that level of respect, appreciation, admiration, I guess, to where it deserves to be for youth sports and CCAA as a whole?
I think one of the things, like, I think it's starting to come. We're making a lot of inroads, and I think that
100%.
that comes with the game is growing in Canada, right? As we're getting more players in the NBA and the WNBA,
right.
More eyes are turning towards it, and you and I talked a lot of times just in messages on Instagram and whatnot. Like, I love the fact that this is going on, that you and I are able to have this conversation, because I think back to when I was playing 10 years ago, and the only thing that we had the Hoop Life forum on the internet, which was basically just like a bunch of people ripping different things that they didn't like and whatnot, and players ripping on other teams and coaches that they didn't like behind screen names and everything. But being able to have this where we're seeing, hey, somebody at wherever in the ACAA just signed somebody, like that's stuff that myself as somebody out west, I just didn't have the opportunity to see 10 years ago, and this whole thing of being able to see other coaches and hear other coaches on a podcast like this has been huge. And I think as the game is growing, this is growing, and I'm sure you're seeing in your numbers that we keep going with this, and we keep, like, the eyes are coming. And I know we as coaches that are, we're running our school's Instagram accounts and our team's Instagram accounts and whatnot, as we get things like this, like, we got to share it. We got to put it out there. I know for myself personally, I've put it on our team's Instagram. I put it on my personal one. I put it out on my personal Facebook. I even put it out in my MLB The Show Facebook group that I'm in. Just
That's
trying
awesome.
to do whatever we can, I can to get more eyes on what is really a great level of basketball. I think, for myself personally, I was talking with our athletic director, Stan, earlier today, and we're talking about different things in basketball, Saskatchewan, and provincial teams and whatnot. And in Saskatchewan, we have the U of R, the U of S, and us at the CCAA level, and then U of R, U of S at the U Sport level. And one of the things that we're trying to do here at Briercrest with our basketball programs is we're trying to get in the minds of kids in Saskatchewan that, like, this is a great level of basketball. It doesn't have to be, U of R, U of S, or bust. There's great level of basketball here at the college level. I sometimes think that our struggle in trying to do that is the same struggle that we're going through on a national level, just getting people's eyes onto our game. This is a great level of basketball that, the U Sport finals are on Sportsnet or whatever it is for the week that they're there and whatnot. But that for some people, that's their only experience. Maybe they're flipping through the channels and they see 30 seconds and then they're on to something else, but they don't realize how great a level of basketball this is. And there's a lot of great basketball players from Canada, from all over the world, that come to play at this level, and really, I'm really excited about that and where this is going. But I think, just keeping driving what we're doing right now, sharing lots of things on social media is really going to help push things forward.
Yeah, I think with the CCAA, I think it's obviously there's not as much or nearly as much coverage as there is U Sports, because there's not that week-long window where people magically pay attention and then it's done. But I think it's just the argument I hear a lot of why there isn't coverage is people say there's not an appetite for it. And I find that to be a load of crap, for lack of a better term, because I think, especially locally, there's a lot of appetite. Obviously, Caronport, obviously big with the Clippers, or big with Briercrest and everybody else. And then every kind of city is a hub for their school. But I think nationally, I think there is more of an appetite than people realize. Whether it's, like you said, seeing a school out east signing a player from the OUA going now to the ACAA, making that jump. People on the West Coast may want to read about that. You never know. And I mean, I think it's an easy argument to say there's no appetite because nobody's really done it. So how do you know there's an appetite if you don't do it? And it's
Well, I mean,
it's kind of a cop-out, I think.
I think so too. I mean, having sat in meetings with the ACAC, when I was doing the assistant AD thing and hearing about numbers of just like their streaming platform, and that was whatever it was 3-4 years ago now. Like there is absolutely an appetite for it. 100%. And yeah, you can say that sure, it's parents watching their kids' games, it's and whatnot, but I mean, parents will watch their kids' games. You don't think a parent is going to want to read an article about their son or daughter? You don't think if their son or daughter is on this podcast that they're not going to want to listen to it?
Right.
There is absolutely an appetite for. I mean, I have friends down in the States that from video games that I've never met in person. That sharing that I'm going to be on it. They're like, yeah, man, send me the link so that I can listen to it. Right. There is absolutely an appetite for it that I think we need to take, and we need to feed that appetite.
And again, it comes off too, like you said, there's players from the United States, around the world that come and play at this level who obviously with time differences or whatever may not be able to watch a live stream, but in some schools are obviously have a better live stream than others. So it's a lot easier to watch some. In some, there's obviously a paywall, so you have to pay to watch.
Yeah.
But if you have say a player from Ontario that goes to play at a Trinity Western across like your 3 time zone difference.
Yeah.
You think they're going to want more access to see what their son or daughter is doing than just waiting for a live stream, whether it's a story or a game recap or anything, just kind of having a few more options, I guess, for them to follow along, and then they're going to share with their friends and whoever else. And I think there's definitely an appetite for it from both levels, sure. CCAA, U Sports, basketball in Canada as a whole.
Definitely.
I think just we're going the right direction. Like you said, we're making progress and people are paying attention. Just got to keep that
and
going.
I think too, like for us as coaches and players, even doing more than we are, like a lot of coaches, we're all out involved in the community and whatnot, but even just being more involved in the community and just letting people know, hey, check this out. Like, here's a story on us. Here's me talking on a podcast. Here's a live stream of our game, different things like that. Like, people will watch. And, I think about Saskatchewan. We have a lot of rural communities here that they don't get to see this level of basketball sometimes. And, it's one of my responsibilities, one of my goals to get out into those communities to be like, hey, we're doing whatever. We run a camp here every summer at Briercrest, and for some kids that come to the camp, one of the goals I have for the camp going forward is every day doing some pickup with our girls at the end of the day, because for some of the people that come to the camp that may live in a town of 150 people, these may be the best basketball players they ever see in their life. Right. And so, showing them that and then being like, hey, during the season, you can find our games here. And then all of a sudden maybe they watch and they're like, oh, wow. And maybe you get that one kid that, like, they're from that 200-person small town that just all of a sudden shoots up to be, on the guy's side, like 6'9", like those big farm kids from Saskatchewan do. They remember you saying, hey, check it out. I remember going to your camp and all that sort of stuff. And the next thing you know, they're indoor, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for us as coaches and players to kind of get out into our communities to help just build and grow the game even more.
Right. I mean, obviously, some people may not want to do like certain aspects of it. It may not be for everybody. I mean, like I know I've sent I don't know how many emails to like for media requests that go unresponded, unacknowledged. I mean, that's fine. I get it. But then you can't come back and say, well, we need more when they're, it's a double-edged sword, I think. But like you said, I think there's always more we can do, kind of obviously within your own restraints, obviously financially or whatever, that can have that impact, like you said, with the camps or whatever, just to get people kind of paying attention to what every program is doing, because it's always going to be a little bit different.
Totally.
How did your love for the MLB The Show come about? Are you a big baseball guy, or like, because actually your Twitter account's dedicated to just kind of your own personal opinions in the show, and where does love for the game come from?
So I actually like growing up in Kingston. So I lived in Kingston until I was 11. Then we moved out to Edmonton. But I grew up playing travel ball baseball in Kingston, and baseball was actually growing up my best sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Jays and whatnot, and so MLB The Show. I mean, I love video games. I mean, I'm 31 years old, so I grew up in the video game generation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I just kind of got involved with playing it. Just whatnot, playing way back. I think it's the first one I played was like 2006 or whatnot, and and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, it was 2016. I bought the version of it, and I started playing online, and I was pretty terrible. But then I got connected with like a couple of Facebook groups and met a lot of really cool people, and like kind of some guys, top players, and that kind of took me under their wing, and then I kind of started to not toot my own horn, but started to get pretty good. And yeah, so I kind of kept, it's kind of been my game of choice for the last 4 years, kind of, being pretty involved in that community and hanging out, and used to stream a little bit here and there, and the old Twitch thing and whatnot. And so, yeah, that's my other life that I like to say sometimes, because I put in quite a few hours there, and I feel got myself to a pretty good level. I mean, last year I was 35th overall in the world, so I was pretty pumped about that. Finished there last year at the end of the year, so I was like, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's kind of I used to play a lot of the old NHL video games, and then I used to kind of just play the baseball games here and there and whatnot. But then one year I just flipped it on, and I was just like, let's see what this whole online thing is about in baseball. And then I just kind of hooked, and it's been a pretty crazy ride ever since.
So do you play like the Diamond Dynasty, like build your team with cards and everything else?
That is my mode of choice. I'm big in the Diamond Dynasty scene. So
it seems to buy the game like every other year. I kind of go in like a 2-year window, and then I get into like like a month, like 2-month kick, or it's like every day you're playing whatever. And then after a while, like I'm just okay, well that was fun, and I kind of forget about it for a bit, and then I go back and like a month or 2 months straight, and it's just a struggle. Like this year again, like it came out like right after COVID hit, so bought it then, and I was like 2 months. I'm like I'm gonna go, and then I don't know what happened. I just stopped again, and I mean. Like back when I broke my ankle, I used to play MLB 05 on GameCube with Manny Ramirez on the cover. Yeah,
that's a classic.
And because I couldn't do anything with a broken ankle, played every single game in a season before online was a thing.
Yeah,
and didn't lose a game until I accidentally simulated one in the playoffs, and that was the only one I lost. And I was like, this is the worst.
That was a classic game. That's one of my favorite games of all time.
It was fun.
Great one.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I can get lost in it sometimes, and once the wife and kids go to bed, and it's next thing you know, it's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, man, I need to get to sleep because I've been playing too long, sort of thing. So yeah, I can kind of get lost in it sometimes.
Do you have a go-to player that never lets you down?
Never. Like I'm, growing up in the 90s and watching baseball, I mean, I'm a huge Jays fan, but I mean, if you grow up in the 90s, Ken Griffey Jr. is usually your guy. So every year when he comes out, I got to get him on the team because, even if I don't do well with him, which I always, but he's always the guy that's got to stay.
Right.
It's Junior. I mean, everything about me as a baseball player, even though I was a pitcher, like every time I step up to bat, the batting stance is like Griffey. I get left-handed, so I was just everything was trying to be like Griffey. And before practice or at practice, and before games and whatnot, I got the hat backwards, like taking batting practice and everything. Trying to be Griffey. That was always what it was.
Just channel your inner Junior and just let it go.
Always, yeah. Always got the wiggle, like the
wiggle.
You try to hit it, and you try to his walk down the line and everything like that. Oh man,
one of the smoothest swings ever in the game.
Oh man, just
effortless. So we always used to try like the Gary Sheffield, like the waggle.
Sheffield, the waggle, yeah, he has a great swing too.
The Tony Batista front facing stance until you swing, and then you throw it back and.
Yeah.
everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember like growing up, like that was always the thing. Like you'd be hitting before practice and you try to do everybody's stance when you're growing up. But yeah, Griffey was always the guy. It was always Junior.
For me now, like playing I'm a big Rangers fan.
Oh yeah.
Always have been. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It was when I was a kid because I used to tell people I was born in Tyler, Texas, and that's how I got my name. So then I just picked Texas, and that was it. Yeah. The worst contact in the game, but power is Gallo. Like I love Gallo.
Yeah, Joey Gallo. He's one of my favorites to use because usually, like, you know, if he hits it, it just goes, and it goes a long way.
Yeah,
you know, he's one of those guys. Guys complain about him in the game because you know it's a lot easier to hit in MLB The Show than it is to hit in the real major leagues. So you get guys to hit like 350 with Joey Gallo with a bajillion home runs.
Right.
And you get people complain, Joey Gallo hits like 230 in real life. He's never going to hit like that.
That's why it's a video game. That's why it's fake.
That's right. They always talk about video game numbers. He is like the guy for video game numbers.
Mm-hmm. Any last word from you? Anything else you want to add in that we missed on the show, on your career? Anything? I'll kind of leave the last word to you before we wrap it up.
No, this has been really cool. It's been like I was telling you before, like I was nervous, but it was a nervous excitement, you know, like I was excited to come on and chat and you know, let people know a little bit about who I am and what our program is and whatnot. This is a really cool experience. I've been pretty excited the last couple of weeks knowing that I was going to be doing this. So yeah, I don't think I have too much else.
I need to make shirts. I need to make shirts for that. Then for you, like just says I survived the Four Quarters podcast and give it to people when they're nervous.
I need it. I'm wearing the toque right now, so the sweat, you know, nobody can see the sweat coming down and everything that's going on underneath it.
But no, I appreciate you doing this. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you guys are doing practice right when we're done this, so I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. And anytime you want to do it again, hopefully not as nervous, there's always a spot here for you. We'll do it again.
I appreciate that, man. Pleasure's been all mine. This has been really awesome.
I appreciate that. Thanks.